Chapter 401. The Right Tool for the Job. Dominic passed Amy an ogre hunting rifle as they reached 200 meters from the clan. Here, start out with this, and then we will switch weapons when they get closer. Use the solid shot to start with. It's better against ogres. You do have the create munitions spell, right? He asked. Yeah, it's one of the basics for the Duskblade sect. I'll take good care of the rifle. Amy joked as she checked it for any issues. They approached to the 100-meter mark, where their accuracy would be called acceptable, as neither was a professional marksman, and took aim. The ogre clan was only 10 strong, but 10 ogre cores were as valuable as 200 of the Frogger cores, just based on their level. But to a blacksmith, level 20 cores were infinitely more valuable than the lower-level ones. The sound of rifles split the air, and 2 ogres dropped. Then another 2 as Dominic and Amy furiously worked the actions on their weapons and picked targets who hadn't noticed them yet. That got them through the first 6 as the ogre's eyesight was not great, and they were relatively small targets in the long grass. But then, they were charging, and the duo had to change to aiming at the center of their bodies, which were armored, or their legs, which were not an instant kill. Dominic went for the legs, hoping to slow their approach, while Amy tried for the head the first time, and missed. Her second shot hit a chest plate, but the reduced penetration left her doing minimal damage, even with Firebolt, enhancing the shot and damaging the armor. Dominic slowed a second ogre with his second shot, then paused to get a headshot on the first one, which had stumbled and fallen over a rock. Then, it was time for pistols, as the ogres were too close for anything else. From so close, it was not hard to get a solid hit, but with their damage reduction, even shooting them in the head was not a guaranteed kill. Not even for a level 20 pistol. The swing of an enormous club sent Dominic rolling backwards to avoid it, and then running to the side to keep the creature from getting another good swing at him. 8 times Dominic had to shoot his next target as he ran, and from the way it was holding its head, it might not be dying. So, he switched back to the rifle, and hoped for the best. It wasn't easy to shoot a rifle in such close quarters, but with the target on the ground, the kill shot was a success, leaving him free to deal with the 2 limping ogres. Amy was much faster than he was, Dominic noted as the mage darted around the battlefield with both pistols blazing. It had to be a spell, as she was stepping on air every few seconds, using non-existent obstacles as springboards to change direction. Incredibly effective as a fighting style, and worthy of a mage sect full of assassins. She did have perfectly good melee weapons, but she had no intentions of getting close enough to need to use them if there was any way that she could avoid it. One lucky hit was all that the ogre needed, and neither of them had any healing spells. Dominic smiled as the last of the ogres dropped, then tapped all the bodies with a hand to collect the monster cores. As he did, he noticed that there were quite a few items in his storage ring that were not cores. Those were all that was supposed to be in there, and he had them piled separately from the rest of his monster cores, so that he knew how much was supposed to be split. But among the pile of cores were multiple swords, some folded cloth, a pair of boots, and 1 rolled scroll. That was exactly what he had been hoping for. I think I got a crafting scroll. Dominic quietly informed Amy as she checked the area for more nearby portal beacons. Nice. Check it when we get back. If you do it now, you'll get all distracted with the need to make a cool new thing. She replied. Good point. That is definitely more distracting than the urge to know what sort of new thing I might be able to make. There is a chance that it's not an item that will be useful to me after all. Amy winked at him. There is a chance that it's an alchemy scroll or something as well. You don't always get the items that you need, even if the monster blessing is pretty reliable. Dominic nodded. Well, we can always hope to add to the pile as well. How about it? Did you find any other portal beacons? I thought that we were going to find your wife. Dominic shrugged. She's in this general direction. We're bound to find her eventually. Now, how about those beacons? Amy laughed at his casual attitude. Yeah, there is another right in front of us, just over that hill. I can hear combat in that direction, so there is an army unit somewhere close. But the way that the sound carries here, it's hard to tell exactly. Most of her experience was either in the desert or in the cities, so she hadn't quite gotten used to the way that the grasslands muffled sound. Then off we go. It had better be something good. We should have kept the scryer with us. Amy just rolled her eyes. The mage who could do the scrying was among the injured, as the lines had been breached by the Minotaur force. He wasn't in bad shape, but he did need to go back to the sect and get someone to look at his injuries after he took the healing potion. With no more hesitation, the pair moved toward the next portal beacon and the sound of fighting. A much larger fight than they had expected, but a small group attracted much less attention than a full unit of royal guards and a cavalry company would. Chapter 402. Assist the cavalry. Much less attention, as it had immediately become obvious when they crested the hill to find that the cavalry riflemen were running a hit-and-run campaign against hundreds of minotaurs, while what looked like a small city worth of gnolls were engaged with the royal guards. The royal guard had chosen a ravine to fight in, with the cavalry taking the high ground to defend them from above. That meant that the gnolls could only attack in smaller groups, giving the paladins time to recover, cycle front guards, and heal. An exceptional combat tactic, as long as the cavalry kept the top of the ravine clear of enemies. But that didn't look like it was going to be the case for long, as there were simply too many of the monsters for the cavalry to deal with, and more were coming out of a group of tents in the distance every second. That made it easy to find the portal beacon, but also much more difficult to actually do anything about it. Knowing that it was there was one thing, but getting through 5,000 human-sized monsters with basic weapons proficiency to get to it was something else entirely. Fortunately, the gnolls weren't known to have shamans or other magic users among their ranks. They did exist, but they were so rare that it was more of a historical footnote than the sign of a large group, the way that it was with goblins. Should we go for the portal, or aid the cavalry? Amy whispered as she put the borrowed rifle away and switched to pistols. The one full-sized pistol looked odd in her hand, but Dominic knew that the mana regeneration was key to keeping up in a long battle, and they were going to need fireballs to make this an even fight. Once they got back, he was building that directly into some rifles. Fireball and mana regeneration on hit. It wouldn't be easy to do, but it just might be the perfect weapon for defending against large groups of monsters. Let's move closer to the front of the fight. Not straight for the portal. It's better if we can thin out the horde as it approaches, instead of leaving them on the other side of the portal for someone else to deal with. But scattering fireballs through the horde will give the force a break. Do they have one of your mages with them? Dominic replied. Amy closed her eyes, using her mana sense to try to find other mages. Yes, there are 5 of them with the paladins. She has more than just her own paladins with her. There are 30 of them. So, I think that she might have both princes with her. Amy informed him a few seconds later. It's a shame that the second prince isn't here. He would enjoy a good fight and new magic users to talk to. But if they have 5 mages and 30 paladins, they should be all right in the valley for now. It's better that we work on keeping the horde from overrunning the cavalry position and gaining the high ground. Gnolls are known to use arrows and thrown spears, which would be a nightmare for a force in the valley. Dominic replied. You know, you're just as much of a slave driver in combat as you are at the forge. 1 fight a day is usually all that anyone volunteers for, even if they're greedy and want to gather all the wealth they can. She joked. It's not just about the money. You can't forget the fame, the glory, and that uniquely peaceful feeling of getting to sleep in your own bed without fearing that your spouse will murder you in your sleep for not helping. The men of the cavalry regiment thought that they were insane, the way that they were laughing as they charged into battle. But the 4 pistols hurling fireballs into the gnolls were devastating. Gnolls were not particularly strong, level 4 or 5 on average, similar to a hobgoblin in combat effectiveness, but less brute strength and more agility and intelligence. Still, to charge at them like that, relying on magic to keep you safe, knowing that it was a limited resource, was insane. However, Dominic only used fireballs with 1 pistol, and he was using Arcane Blast with the other for the additional mana and healing. He was in no danger of running out, even if he had to use internal mana for the fireballs, while he could use external for the Arcane Blast without losing attack speed. Amy knew from experience that she was going to have enough mana to keep reloading and firing the pistols even when she ran low on it and had to slow down the fireballs. But gunshots alone would be enough to deter the monsters when they were coming from such a powerful mana revolver. Move back as we shoot. It will pull them out into a line and make it easier for the cavalry to deal with them. Amy instructed as their fireballs blasted huge gaps in the advancing gnoll formation. Got it. Spread them out and then move forward toward the portal. It should pull the whole group apart and reduce the number going down into the ravine. She can't get mad at me for going after the loot if she knows that I did my best to make her day easier, right? Dominic's eyes glowed gold as the bloodlust of a dragonkin rose to the surface, and he didn't even notice that his fangs were beginning to extend. She will definitely be pleased to know. I just wish that I could keep up the number of spells that you use. Amy agreed. We can work on that when we get back. I have some other good ideas as well. I think that the town of Westover needs a water park. It's already raining. We might as well give the kids somewhere to play in the water. Dominic laughed. Amy frowned. It wasn't raining. No, damn it. There it was, the first few drops were falling. Dominic must have smelled the rain before it began. Chapter 403, New Cavalry Tactics. The thought of a water park, where the kids were playing on water slides in the rainy season, where everyone traditionally hid inside to stay dry, made Amy laugh along with Dominic as they fought. The explosions were enough to quickly diminish the number of gnolls in the area, but more were still coming out of the portals in the tents, and they were spreading out to attack the full force. I think that they have a commander staying behind to guide them. They have adapted to your plan, and they're coming to target us. She informed Dominic, who didn't appear to be planning at all at this point. Excellent news. We are going to have so many monster cores when we finish here. So many. Dominic joked. That seemed inevitable when you had a mage who didn't run out of mana. But Magitech pistols were an unfair advantage over the common monster. It had changed the whole way that battles were fought. But Amy was sure that she was hearing the sound of artillery in the valley as well. Alexis' Royal Guard should have mortar launchers if she recalled correctly, and they were putting them to good use. Push forward. Let's collect some of this loot while the gnolls are confused. Dominic instructed, already putting his plan into motion. The line had spread out, but Dominic didn't want it too thin, as that reduced the number who died to every fireball. What he needed was a dense wall of monsters, spread out so that the cavalry could get a good shot at them. They all had rifles and pistols, so they were mostly stationary. But with the ability to move quickly, they could flank the gnolls to attack at any weak point, or reinforce the edges of the ravine if the monsters tried to push forward and surround the paladins down below. Reinforce the mages. Dominic heard someone in the cavalry shout, moments before he realized what their actions would look like from their allies' point of view. To them, it looked like the Duke and his assistant were being overrun with gnolls. But really, Dominic just wanted to grab a few hundred monster cores before changing positions. However, there was no way to relay that back to the cavalry. They wouldn't be able to see his hand signals from their position, with the gnolls in a way, and their hearing wasn't good enough for him to just shout at them. Make it quick, they got the wrong idea. Dominic instructed as he quickly loaded up on monster cores. Got it, boss. But should we use this chance to push further into their lines? We could let the cavalry get all the way to the front of the ravine again, so they can funnel them down to the paladins and the mages. Amy suggested. Oh, I like that. Let's go with your plan. Fireballs it is. The mage just laughed as the monsters charging at them vanished in a wall of fiery death. It burned through an impressive amount of mana every second, but the gnollish horde was being moved back by 20 meters every few seconds as well. Don't forget the loot. It's all about the loot. She muttered to herself as she saw Dominic dodging through the dead to tap as many as possible for their monster core drops. At that rate, the horde was all the way to the entrance of the ravine by the time that her mana was running low, and Amy whistled to Dominic that they had gone far enough. She was going to need some time with just the pistols to recover from the exertion, but she knew that Dominic could keep up the effort much longer than she could, with his mana recovery advantage. They both pulled back from the battle, grabbing a few more cores as they retreated, while the cavalry pushed forward to hold the new line. That let them send a few men on foot to loot the back lines, which were now behind the main force, and recover as much of the loot as possible. They were here as mercenaries, at least in theory. They were still Signia soldiers on Signia territory, though. So, they were under no illusions of being able to keep everything that they grabbed. However, that didn't mean they wouldn't get to keep any of it. Dominic and Amy moved to the side of the horde again, thinning the crowd, but this time with the intention of moving forward and closer to the portal beacons. The number of monsters coming through was insane, and unless they had just relieved a major city from being under attack, it didn't make any sense. They had to investigate. But more than that, they needed to know if this same situation was playing out all over the Horde. The Duskblade sect had sent nearly all their combat-capable members to this fight, and if the tide was unending, they could suffer heavy casualties that would impact not only their ability to teach the students next week, but their future as a sect. There was always a risk to a large job like this one, and that was part of the reason that the pay was expected to be so high. But no mage clan would take on a suicide mission. Down in the valley, Alexis was thinking the same thing that Dominic was. If this monster tide didn't thin out soon, they were going to have to send messages to entirely too many soldiers' families, informing them that they had been lost in battle when their nation wasn't officially at war. That was never an easy letter to write, or an easy burden to bear. However, far from their battle, the capital city of Skipple had a very different outlook on life. Over the course of the last few hours, 50,000 monsters had left the siege of the city, vanishing through portals. Now, all that was left were a few dozen mages and 5,000 ogres. The remainder of their royal guard was ready to push out and eliminate this threat from the traitor armies once and for all. They didn't know who had called away the monsters, or if it was just a trap to lure out their forces, but it looked like this was the only opportunity that they were going to be given to attack the mages directly, and that was the only way that they could end this siege. Chapter 404. Mages Located. The Knoll tide was coming to a halt as the last of the forces passed through the portal, and Amy smiled as she sensed a new presence at the tents. Good news, Your Grace. There are mages. Rebel mages, if I am correct. They have retreated from whatever battle they were originally assigned to, and they have come here, through the portals. Dominic smiled back at her. Shall we? A little detour to the camp sounds like a lovely outing. Amy laughed at his eagerness. No wonder you managed to land the Paladin Princess. Your eagerness to kill traitors just might be your most endearing trait. That might not be a compliment coming from anyone else, but between Amy and Dominic, it definitely was. She was already moving clear of the Knoll horde, so she could get to the tents. The mages looked out at the devastation, trying to make sense of what had just happened here. Their forces had been sent back through the portal by the elders, who insisted that the army here was under threat. But when they extended their senses, they only found 100 cavalrymen and a mage. That was not enough to threaten 10,000 gnolls. So, they activated levitation to look over the battle and try to make sense of the death toll. Perhaps there was much more of an enemy force to start with, and only this small group of cavalry remained. If that was the case, they could bring their force back when the fight was over and resume the siege. Nobody would fault them for splitting their attention. It was only natural to need to know the situation. But when the first man's had exploded, thanks to an arcane blast-infused rifle round, the others quickly began to understand that things here were not as they seemed. Their barriers did nothing to defend them against those shots. The spell cast on them was so strong that it broke through their area barrier with ease, and the mana bullet was intended to take out ogres and other large monsters, not mere humans. Another mage dropped as Amy fired, then a third from Dominic, before they managed to find the source of the threat. Of all places, they hadn't expected it to be the lone mage that was shooting at them. But she wasn't alone. There was a rifleman with her that had somehow completely escaped their notice. A rifleman that was using arcane blast on his bullets. It didn't take a genius to realize who he was and what was happening, but they were not elders. None of them had an area barrier above level 7, and the bullets simply shattered it on contact. For left, they have dropped to the ground now, and they're trying to hide in the camp. Amy announced as she moved to intercept their attempts to escape. Amy and Dominic split up as they moved through the camp, each using their own methods to hunt the surviving mages. Dominic wasn't having any troubles, as the mages were so terrified that he could smell the sweat coming off them, but they also weren't trained to move silently and kept tripping over things as they ran. One shot, and a mage dropped with a pistol round through his back. Then a girlish scream, too terrified to be Amy. The other mage had seen their comrade die. Dominic approached and found the young man hiding under a pile of fur pelts in one of the tents. Seriously? That was your grand plan? Hide under a pile of furs? Now, are you going to come out, or Do I just start shooting and hope to hit something vital? He asked, then kicked the side of the pile. Horrified by his mockery, the mage extended their hands out of the hiding space and slid out from underneath. Mercy, please. I can help you. I will close the portals, anything you want. He begged. Why would I want the portals closed? If they can only send a horde of monsters at me a few dozen at a time, my soldiers can kill them all and get rich in the process. Now tell me, how many did you leave behind, and which location did you pull these gnolls from? Dominic demanded. From the siege on Skipple City. We sent everything but the ogres to this location. Even the mages have come through now. We were among the last to follow our troops. The mage stammered. Because it takes so long to move them through 3 small portals? Dominic guessed. The mage nodded. That's as big as we could make them, but we had a lot of monsters in our force. Understandable. Now, how many ogres were left behind, and how many mages with them? Thousands of ogres. They collected an entire clan, and the elders have been summoning more to fill their ranks. But it's just the elders left at the siege. The rest of us were all sent to the beacons here to save our reinforcements. They said that the Signia army was attacking, but we didn't see them when we got here. Only your mercenaries. Dominic nodded. You are right. It is only my mercenaries here. The armies are too slow to respond, so we are getting fabulously wealthy off this army of monsters. Now about those elders and the ogres. When are they coming? Or are they staying behind? The acolyte trembled in fear. They're not coming. Nobody is coming to save us. The mage was clearly starting to have a mental breakdown now, but Dominic wasn't finished with his questions. How many mages came here, to this battlefield? He demanded. The mage continued to mutter about, nobody is coming, for a few seconds, so Dominic nudged him with his foot and repeated the question. How many of your mages are here? The boy blinked slowly, then counted on his fingers. About 50 in all. Minus the ones you killed just a moment ago. Everyone is dead. They're all dead. I was supposed to graduate early. You know? Finish school and get a job, a real job as a mage on the town guard. His eyes were filling with tears, and Dominic sighed. You know, you're making it hard to want to kill you. Perhaps I could turn you over to the Duskblade sect, and they could reform you? You seem young enough to see sense. The real danger is that you say something about your elders and explode. They've put curses on most of the others, killing curses to prevent betrayal. He explained. The mage nodded. They did it to us all. But I don't know what will trigger it. Chapter 405. Didn't explode at all. Dominic gave the pitiful mage a sad smile, then nodded in understanding. This guy was likely going to die one way or another. There was no need to terrify him even more. But that was when Amy came into the room and saw the kneeling mage. You took a prisoner? And he didn't explode at all. Good work. Now, do we start the interrogation? She asked. There are a few thousand ogres and a dozen elders left at the siege. The rest of the force is here now, along with what I'm going to guess is between 50 and 100 mages. I got that much out of him so far, but I don't know how much I can risk asking. Dominic explained. Amy frowned. That was a clear betrayal of the academy. He should have exploded. But when she checked him, she didn't find any signs of a killing curse on him. Who placed the curse on you? She asked carefully. My arcane theory teacher. Oh my god, he's dead. They're all dead. The mage gasped, then faded into muttering to himself again. Oh, we've been through this once before. Hey, come back to us. Yes, they're all dead, but you're not. At least not yet. Now, was that man with you? Was he one of the guys I shot while they were flying? Dominic asked. The mage nodded mutely, and Amy smiled. Killing curses only worked while the one who cast them was alive, unless it was a blood curse that was sworn to last past death. Those were usually cast with a dying breath, though. Good news, young mage. I think that you might just be fine. Curses often fade with the caster's death. Since you didn't betray him before he died, you should be fine. Now, the question is what we are going to do with you. There is still a battle going on, and I don't trust you behind us. So, it's either bring you with us or kill you now. Which one do you prefer? Her question made the young man stare at her in horror. The dragonkin man was scary, but this small woman, she was terrifying. Others might not see it, but there was something inhuman in those eyes. Not that anyone would mistake Dominic for human, but something was definitely off with Amy, in the other mage's opinion. I will accompany you. I swear, I never wanted to end up like this, not as a monster herder or a traitor to my home nation. It wasn't my choice, and I'm willing to pay whatever price you deem necessary to prove it. He insisted. Well, that's a good start. Perhaps we can bring you with us, and you can start proving yourself by helping us kill the monsters that your people have been summoning here. Call it pro bono work, and if you do it well enough, we will bring you back to the Duskblade sect for corrective education. That's definitely better than death, and you'll only need to work just a few more years to prove yourself trustworthy enough for them to allow you out in public. Dominic decided. The mage looked terrified of the upcoming battle, but Dominic and Amy were immensely pleased with the decision. He would fight until he ran out of mana, and then they would see just how devoted he was to his own survival. All right, we need to get a move on. There is a lovely lady waiting for me. Dominic added, then winked at Amy, who pushed their prisoner forward. The cavalry force was already clearing the way toward the tents where the portals had been, and the paladins were making their way up out of the ravine, so they could fight on the high ground again. It was going to take them some time to collect all those monster cores, though. The best sort of problem to have. Follow after us, and don't try to loot. The mercenaries worked hard for this loot, and it's not right that a prisoner should steal from them. Don't stray far, everyone recognizes those robes, and if you're not with us, you're liable to end up dead faster than you can explain your situation. Amy informed their prisoner with a smile. Yes, ma'am. I will be right beside you. Dominic led the way back into battle, attacking the gnolls from behind, and true to his word, their captive mage joined in. He wasn't all that effective. He was using a level 3 or 4 chain lightning spell. But he was putting in the work as promised. And not just because he was terrified that Amy was going to turn and shoot him if she caught him slacking off. The constant blasting of gunfire grated at his nerves, an unfamiliar sound to his Mage Academy-trained senses. But the damage that the pair were doing by blending magic with magitech weapons was absolutely horrendous. The gnolls were falling in waves, and even the fireballs that Dominic was using, which clearly weren't his specialty, based on the slightly clumsy way that he activated them, were still powerful enough to wipe out whole swathes of the invading monsters. Who was shooting in the wrong direction? Dominic heard Alexis yell as the last of the monsters began to scatter. That would be Amy. I blame the mage. Dominic shouted back. I should have known that you didn't go home with the others. Now stop shooting at us. The fireballs are burning my retinas. Dominic switched to simply using Arcane Blast to clear the last of the monsters as they approached the paladins from the other side of the horde, and then stopped completely to help with the cleanup. Did your group make out all right while scouting locations? Alexis asked as the two groups finally met in the middle. Pretty well. The adventurers aren't going to complain too much, even with some minor injuries. We should have found a healer, though. It would have made the fights a lot easier. Alexis shrugged. We will work on that later. There are bound to be some adventurers with healing skills that aren't part of the Royal Paladins. Once we get a few of them out here, we will be able to send their teams out alone with much less fear of losing someone. Now, who is your third? I don't think that was one of ours. Chapter 406. Found Alexis. Dominic nodded. This is a mage from the invading force. He has most graciously accepted our offer to defect from the Dagos Prince's forces and join our side of the battle. There was a minor matter of him being under a killing curse, but I think that we've gotten that all sorted out. Did you want to move on right away? Or does your team need a break before going after another group of monsters? Alexis glared at him, and Dominic smirked back. Perhaps I should add that we completely depleted the besieging force around a city with this one battle? Having them all in a tidy row and out in the open made the fight so much easier for us. So if we happen upon another fight like this one, it will be because we relieved another city of its invaders. That should be a rather heavy blow to the Moron Prince's forces. He elaborated. The captured mage nodded eagerly. The city of Skipple should be nearly free of invaders now, with only a few thousand ogres remaining. That might not be enough to keep their elite soldiers at bay. Like Signia, they have a large number of magic-using warriors in the royal army. Alexis tapped the hilt of her sword as she considered the options. So, these all came from the capital? I would say that they should have been able to break through the horde easily enough, but with so many civilians in the way and the terrain, I can see how it would be an issue. The mage frowned. Not all of them were at this fight. There were a dozen other groups as well. They were sent to respond to areas where the monster reserves were being overrun. It was an order from above, but I'm not sure who actually issued it. Only that it was something that they didn't believe an acolyte like me needed to know. Alexis shrugged. They weren't wrong to make that call. The man had happily betrayed them the moment that he was captured, and he didn't seem to have any lingering loyalty to his own sect. Or to the academy, wherever he had come from. She didn't know, and she didn't really care. If he survived today, Dominic could deal with him. Give the men 30 minutes to clean up and get something to eat. Then we will move out and hit another target. We don't have much time left before more of the mages will start arriving to reinforce them, and every mage that shows up increases the likelihood that we will lose men by a significant margin. She instructed. The prisoner, eager to help, decided to add a bit of advice for her. There aren't that many elders left. A bunch were already killed, so it's mostly students of the academy who are doing the grunt work, and then some graduates who are loyal to the staff. If you target the strongest one first, the others are unlikely to have a spell above level 10 or 15. I'm not the weakest of my peers. I am almost set to graduate, and my mage skill core is only level 12. Half the others are younger than I am. He offered. Now that is valuable information. Thank you for that. I will leave that to Dominic and Amy, as they both specialize in hunting mages. Alexis replied. The paladins were pretty good at it, but the Duskblade sect specialized in it, and Dominic was just generally good at killing things with his bloodline advantages and firepower. Amy, leave that one with us. We will take care of him, so he's not slowing you down. One of the mages who had come with Alexis' group insisted. Oh, thanks. He's been well behaved, but keep an eye on him. He might stop for a little cry, or try to run away at some point. The mage chuckled, while the prisoner looked vaguely insulted. But Dominic thought that Amy was right. Once he realized how badly things were going for his team, he was definitely going to need to stop and cry for a minute. As one, the cavalry formed into ranks, and Dominic turned to Alexis for directions. We're going to head toward the core of the force. Everyone is working from the edges toward the middle, so you can flank us or try to keep up with the cavalry. She informed him with a smirk. Even the royal paladins had mechanical horses today, so there was no way that Dominic and Amy could keep up with their charge. We'll flank to your west and look for something good to hunt. See you in the middle. Dominic agreed. Alexis led the soldiers away, and Amy turned to Dominic with an intensely curious look. It seems that you're actually good friends, but she doesn't want to fight beside you. Not like she doesn't trust you, but something else. The little mage announced. It's a competition. What she wants is to kill more or better monsters than I do so that she can gloat about it when we go home. If she finds an ogre lord or something, she will be over the moon with joy. Paladins get like that when they have a chance to fight monsters. Dominic explained. And you're any better? Oh no. I'm far worse, but that's only more reason for her to want to compete. Is this some strange couples flirting thing that I just don't get? Amy asked. 100% yes. Don't think about it too hard. It's not based on logic, but on the mutual enjoyment of a shared interest and an intensely competitive spirit. If you try to make it make sense, it takes all the fun out of it. Dominic joked. Then he paused and gestured ahead. I sense more monsters up ahead. We might luck out this time and get all the good stuff. Amy shook her head in dismay. Well, at least I'm getting rich off this. But for the record, just killing the monsters is reason enough. You don't need to make it weird and flirty with the wife. Chapter 407. They sent everyone. Amy laughed as she realized what sort of monster pack they had stumbled across in their rush to find enough targets to defeat the paladins of the Royal Guard. Well, this will certainly get us an award of some sort. You know, assuming that we don't actually die. Amy whispered. They're not bulletproof or magic resistant. Dominic noted as he stared at the group ahead of them. That doesn't help if they're actually using magic. She retorted. In front of them was an entire class of mages, 30 children, no more than 10 or 12 years old, along with one elder, and dozens of goblin shamans. No girls, Amy whispered, and Dominic noticed that her eyes turned completely silver as rage overtook her expression. Of course there weren't. They were breeding goblins. The women would be. No, that wasn't the issue. These were students. Students. Children whose classmates had been sentenced unjustly to a life of living hell to create more goblin shamans for the war effort. So, I'm going to kill that teacher, and you can take care of the shamans. Amy whispered. All right, but that means you get to deal with the children. Who knows how corrupted they have become from the blood rituals and curses. They're likely to be just as evil as he is by this point, completely broken inside. Dominic warned. Then, they all die. Humans are rarely trustworthy to begin with. Dominic couldn't argue with that. He had often felt the same way about them, and they had hunted him for half his life. So, he would let Amy sort them out. But her words were telling. As much as she looked like a petite human girl, it was clear that she was not human at all. She also wasn't a dragonkin, so she was more likely monster-blooded, with enough monster in her lineage that she didn't really view herself as human, despite passing completely for one. That was unusual. If someone had monster blood, but passed as human, their parents usually wouldn't even tell them. They would just find out that they had superior abilities compared to their peers, or a strong affinity for magic. They would put it down to luck, and that was that. But Dominic wasn't thinking about that as he stalked through the long grass, approaching the goblin shamans with a rifle in his hands. This was going to be short and messy, Dominic was sure of it. The faster that he could eliminate the shamans, the easier it would be, as their spells took some time to cast. But on the other hand, they were also level 4 creatures, and even if they cast a barrier, his magic would shatter it in a single hit. Still, it was better not to waste energy. What he needed was a larger area spell than Fireball. It was a good one, but with the power difference between him and the goblin shamans, it really was overkill. Maybe Amy knew a way to cast more than one fireball at a time? If he could cast 5 or 6 of them at a lower level, that would be just right. He should have made more mortars. Instead, the spells exploded among the goblins as Dominic worked the action on his rifle, and the children in mage robes began to scream in terror. But they weren't running away, they were trying to cast spells in his direction, even in their terrified state. The shamans raised their staves, and lightning bolts crackled through the air toward Dominic, who began attacking with arcane blasts in between rifle shots. It was enough to renew the mana needed to keep his area barrier up for a few more seconds, while the explosions whittled down the number of enemies, and Amy got in position to assassinate the elder of the mage sect. Once he was gone, Dominic had some hope that the boys could be rescued. But the way that they were attacking, it might be better just to keep one alive to find out where the girls were being kept prisoner. Leaving them alive to suffer was just inhumane. Only, when Dominic had eliminated the shamans, there was still no sign of the little mage, and the elder was finishing a defensive ritual around their position. So, Dominic turned the rifle on him and laughed at the panicked expression on the man's face when 5 fireballs in quick succession exploded against his barrier. The mana bullets alone would strain most mages' ability to keep their barrier up, but the fireballs were a great visual distraction. He might not know where Amy went, but it shouldn't be too challenging to take out this teacher, as long as the man wasn't too far above level 20 with his defensive magic. 2 more bullets, and the barrier collapsed. Then a third took the elder in the forehead, causing an explosion of gore to rain down on the students when the fireball detonated. That was the turning point for them. The children collapsed to their knees, crying and begging, all thought of fighting forgotten. But still, Dominic didn't know where Amy had gone. Gentlemen, I have a few questions for you, and if you want to survive, you will answer quickly and accurately. Where are the girls from your class? Dominic began. They all turned to point at a tent as Dominic continued his questioning. Where is the nearest group of mages that is not from your class? For a few seconds, they looked confused, as if that question had not occurred to them. But after a few seconds, they all began to point in different directions, including the one that he had come from. Dominic suspected that they had no idea and were just trying to allocate object, type magic usage to give him an answer that didn't lead to them all dying. I will take that as you don't know. Unfortunate, really. Now, what should I do with you? He asked rhetorically. The battlefield was silent for a few seconds, then a boy jumped up and charged at Dominic with a dagger in his hands. You will die. Chapter 408. Even the Dumb Ones. Dominic reacted on pure instinct, swatting the dagger away with his rifle, then tearing the boy's throat out with his claws. Wrong answer. Now, the boys were really crying, but none had that spark of rebellion that said they were about to do something stupid. Please, we won't resist. Don't kill us. You're from one of those desert assassin sects, right? Teacher Dean warned us about them, how they're all murderers who will come for us if we don't behave. One of the boys pleaded. Dominic smiled, letting them see all four extended fangs clearly. Oh, I'm much worse than that, but you're not entirely wrong. Your teacher misbehaved, and we came for him. If you're willing to behave for me, then I will take you somewhere safe, where you can sit and wait for an elder to decide if you're going to be expelled or continue your training under new elders. Expelled? The student asked, horrified. Dominic nodded happily. Expelled. From training, from your friend group, from life itself. Removed, deleted. It's all up to how well you can impress the elders. That's not my job. Then, Amy reappeared with a gold object in her hand, waving to Dominic in the distance. That looked like a portal beacon, so Dominic motioned for the boys to stand. Get up. You're going to the elders now. Remember, behave yourselves. Tell the truth and don't lie. If you do what they say, you'll probably get to continue your training. He commanded. Obediently, the boys walked over to where Amy was standing in front of a tunnel entrance. Then, they stopped as they realized where they were being led. Oh, so you didn't know what was happening down there. I'm sure the elders will be truly interested in that. But we're not sending you to the goblins. You're going through a portal. Dominic informed them. Amy gave him a strange look. She had sent the girls through for treatment, but she hadn't expected Dominic to bring the other students with him. In fact, she hadn't expected him to leave any of them alive once they started casting spells at him. But today was just full of surprises. The portal is still open, right? Dominic whispered as he got close to her. Amy nodded. I didn't think we would need it, but they're going to send us a few reinforcements. Tell them to take these into custody and check them over. They might be corrupted by dark magic. I'm not an expert in that, but they look suitably terrified, and they promise that they're open to accepting their punishment before studying corrective lessons under a new elder. Amy rolled her eyes. Dominic was turning the Duskblade sect into a combination prison and rehabilitation facility for juvenile mages. Though, if they could be properly indoctrinated, that would just add to the sect's strength, as these kids had all been vetted and proven to have passable talent for magic. No sect would turn down capable recruits if there was even a decent chance of making them loyal. Two mages came up out of the tunnel and called the boys down to take them to the tower. Then, they returned with blades at their hips and smiled at Amy. Good work, little one. We've got some work ahead of us, but goblin breeders make excellent assassins if their minds recover. The taller of the two black-haired men whispered. I live to serve, but thank Lord Dominic here for taking out the shamans and the elder while I worked. He did an excellent job and even collected those boys without killing many of them. Amy amended. Dominic shrugged. That one was a slow learner, he doesn't count. The new arrivals noted that the boy had his throat ripped out with claws, and that Dominic hadn't bothered to wipe it off his hand. Sending the two of them so he wasn't left alone with Amy any longer than necessary was definitely the right call, even if they had just been given clearance to leave the infirmary. Both of them had been injured in battle earlier in the day, but with the troll in from the outskirts and the healers within the sect, they were patching everyone up fairly quickly, so they could continue to fight. Once the paladins finished, it would be faster. But Dominic was not with them as expected. Hopefully, he was close so that they could meet up and get the city's best healers back where they were most needed. Where are we off to next? The taller of the two asked. Toward the core of the horde. We're meeting the princess there. Her force is off to my right a kilometer or so. Just try to keep up. We're going to be clearing monsters as fast as possible so that the paladins can't claim that we're slacking. Dominic insisted. He's competing with his wife to see who can kill more of them. Amy quietly amended. Perhaps everyone in Westover was a little crazy, the mage decided. All right, lead the way. Do you know what we've got coming up next? He asked. Not yet. We sent the one who could check for us back with the adventurers. But I'm hoping that it's going to pay well. These level 4 goblin shamans were a bit disappointing after we did so well with the minotaurs. Amy nodded. Hundreds of minotaurs spoiled us. The adventurers made out like bandits during the scouting mission, even after accounting for the injuries and damaged gear. Well, let's not waste time then. The elders want us to bring the paladins back as soon as we can, so they can help with the medical treatment of the soldiers and mages. Some of the forces have had a very rough time of it, and the royal guards all went together, instead of spreading the healers all over the fight. The mage sighed. Dominic laughed. That's because they view fighting as the priority, and healing as the backup skill. Don't worry, we'll get them back home soon enough. Chapter 409. For isn't many. 4 people, even 4 mages, was not generally considered to be a significant fighting force. But once Dominic handed out the mana revolvers to everyone, he knew that the odds would change in their favor. Gone was the disadvantage of the mages, in that they were mostly helpless once they ran out of mana. Instead, they only dropped down to the level of an elite warrior and could continue firing indefinitely, as their mana regeneration would easily cover the cost of reloading the pistols as fast as they could fire. Or it should. Sorry that I don't have more weapons made with mana regeneration on hit. I didn't think about the need for them when I was making this batch. I simply focused on the damage output, as the added fire damage makes for incredible pistols. Nearly as good as adding a firebolt spell to the shot. Better if the one using it isn't a strong mage. But in the hands of the Duskblade sect, they're not quite the right tool for the job. More mana regeneration allows for more fireballs and chain lightning spells, which cause far more destruction than a few bullets. Dominic explained as he led the group forward into battle. I'm sure that we can get past our disappointment. These guns are still pretty good, and I've never been one to complain about more firepower on a mission. The shorter of the mages replied with a smile. The taller man tilted his chin into the distance in front of them. We're behind. I can sense the battle ahead of us, where the paladins are fighting something. It feels more bestial, but I can't tell what it is from here. If we're going to meet them at the center, where all the armies will meet, we need to get a move on. Dominic increased their pace for a few minutes, then slowed again as he found their next target. Lady and gentlemen, it looks like we're in luck, he announced. They had found a camp full of iron shell scorpions, a creature native to the deserts of Axbridge. Though calling it a camp was pushing the boundaries of the definition. There was a single tent with a mage inside, but the rest was just a collection of shallow burrows where the scorpions had dug themselves into the ground to escape the heat of the afternoon sun. That left their back shells exposed, but regulated their temperatures well. It also caused many travelers to mistake them for rocks in the desert and mistakenly assume that a nest of scorpions was actually solid ground, where they might be able to dig for water. It would be the last mistake that they ever made. But everyone in Dominic's group was well aware of that particular trap, and the fact that the scorpions were a level 15 monster with a weak spot beside the base of its neck. The neck itself was armored, as was the head. But as they grew, the armor on their back left a gap that those with exceptional skill or good enough ranged weapons could exploit. Well, at least it's not something we've never seen before. Is everyone ready? Dominic asked. We are. Let's get this done and catch up to the group. Amy, you're in charge of the mage and the portal beacon. The taller mage, who seemed to be the senior member of the sect among them, agreed. They rushed forward, getting into pistol range before they started to attack, while Dominic circled to their right, so he could get a good shot at the monsters that went for the others. However, that plan was doomed to failure. As soon as he separated from the group, all of the scorpions turned to face him, hissing menacingly at the newfound threat. They didn't understand magic or guns, but they did understand that dragonkin were a threat, while humans were food. They spread out to attack, keeping their heads low to protect their vulnerable points from direct attack, but the change in angle made the neck joint clearly visible to the others. The mages began to shoot, with the high-level weapons easily penetrating the soft spots and cracking hard chitin where the shots landed off target. But the scorpions didn't stop, and they raised their tails, preparing to ambush Dominic as soon as they could surround him. Dominic retreated slowly as he fired, using Arcane Blast to injure the scorpions and buy him time for the others to work. The new pistols were unfamiliar in the hands of the mages at first, but they were all trained assassins, and it only took a few shots for their aim to adjust, causing fatal strikes every few shots. Dominic sensed a powerful wave of magic in the distance, and then heard a single gunshot. That was a good sign. By the logic of hunters, 1 shot was a kill, 2 might be a kill, and 3 or more meant that something had gone horribly wrong. Amy was powerful, so she was unlikely to lose an engagement before she could fire twice, especially with a pistol in each hand. So, that 1 shot should be the end of the enemy mage. A scorpion tail slammed into Dominic's area barrier as he moved again, trying to get a shot in on the attackers. Then another and another. That was the end of his defensive spell, and Dominic was left scrambling for a few seconds before he could get another off. But it was enough time for the mages to complete their work, and only the 2 scorpions closest to Dominic remained. He rolled to the left and fired up into the weakened joint where one of his prior shots had missed, and black blood poured from the armored neck of the scorpion, which retreated in agony, looking for hot sand to plug the wound. But they were in long grass, and the creature had no knowledge of slowing blood loss in this unfamiliar environment. A shot from behind broke the creature's tail stinger off, and Amy happily pocketed the deadly venom sac. Those sold for good money, but they were also a key ingredient of many concoctions made by the Duskblade sect. The nest is clear. There was only 1 apprentice mage with these monsters. I think that they might be focusing their remaining numbers on the more valuable targets. She explained. Then we need to get to them before the units without mages do. Loot up and let's go. Someone does have a big bag of looting, right? Because my storage items don't have enough space to be collecting large monster body parts all day. Dominic asked. We have you covered, Your Grace. Storage items are a speciality of the sect, you know. Chapter 410. But it might be enough. Over and over, Dominic led the team into battle with ever-decreasing numbers of monsters. Some of the packs had been deployed to deal with the larger threats of the military units, but from what they were seeing, it looked like the central area used to be the new arrival area, and the summon monsters were deployed outward to join larger groups of their own kind. So, the closer they got to the middle, the more portal beacons they were destroying, and the fewer monsters they were encountering. They were not letting the Dago's forces off too easily, though. Every portal that was open was inspected to find its destination, and to see if there was still a monster horde on the other side. In most cases, there was not. But where there was, a radio report was sent, so the armies could update their maps with current threat levels for the counterattack and assistance of the Dago's king. Word was spreading fast through the armies of Dagos and Skipple, as well as with the Signia and Axbridge royal families, who had a vested interest in what was going on within those nations. If either fell, it would be a catastrophe for the neighboring nations, but also a great opportunity for them to gain some extra land. Signia hadn't taken much in the armistice, but if the king should fall and Prince Kaizan took his place, they would happily renegotiate for more after crushing what was left of the rebel force. Axbridge, who shared a border with both Dagos and Skipple, was in a similar position. They could claim whatever they wanted, even that it was a short-term stability measure, while they took over an entire country. Then, leadership would either pass to a puppet among the Skipple royal family, or a marriage alliance would bind the 2 royal families, with the Skipple royals placed in a conveniently inferior position. Dominic wasn't concerned about that. The potential ramifications had been discussed many times before, but until the attack was over and they found out if there were any more of these reserve armies of monsters, it was all just speculation. We've got goblins again. Why is it always goblins? Amy complained as they stepped out of a small stand of trees that had once been a forest, before the monsters started cutting them for cook fires. Goblins are like cockroaches. They are eternal. Even if every other monster species was wiped off the face of the planet, the goblins would find a way to survive. Dominic joked. Oh, how I wish that you were wrong. She complained as the horde finally noticed their presence. Just use fireball at a low level, and we should be able to clear them fast enough, he suggested, says the man with unlimited mana. Dominic shrugged. She wasn't wrong, but she also had a pistol that regenerated mana on hit. If she cast Fireball through that, she would get enough back from the goblins to continue with a level 4 or 5 Fireball. Fighting goblins in the open was mindless work, and Dominic let his mind wander for a moment. In any other circumstance, they would be in real trouble with these sorts of monster numbers, but with one high-level mage focused entirely on defense and 6 rare grade mana revolvers doing the hard work, accompanied by fireballs, the horde was much less dangerous than the raw data would suggest. It was almost a cheat code, having 4 mages together with Magitech weapons. A glorious cheat code. The fact that this wasn't a natural grouping, with experience and leadership also helped. There were only goblins here, with no clear leader, no shamans, no lord. Just a bunch of summon monsters without a clue. They had been called to this place with no details given, and this close to the center of the formation, they hadn't even been contacted by other monsters to explain what was going on. They only had the magical directive to remain in this place until ordered otherwise. Then, Dominic and the mages broke through the horde and found themselves in a massive clearing around a blood-soaked ritual altar, along with thousands of soldiers. Everyone was holding back, not wanting to get too close to the source of the blood magic, and unsure what they should do now that they had run out of monsters to fight. Normally, that would be a matter for the generals, but they weren't here as soldiers, only mercenaries. And their pay package didn't include whatever that thing was. Amy, you're with me. Let's go destroy whatever blood magic ritual they've got going on in the clearing here, and then call it a day. It should be the primary summoning ritual for this army, I would assume. Dominic instructed. Amy nodded. I certainly hope so. Because if it's just some random destroyed temple that a group of ogres made a mess of, I am not going to be a happy mage. Dominic laughed, then began walking toward the blood-soaked field, hoping to put an end to this drama once and for all. But when he got right to the edge of the ritual area, he found that he could go no further. The entire area was protected by a barrier so strong that he couldn't even feel a flicker from it when he hit it with an arcane blast. Whoever cast this, they're way beyond our level. It might be the combination of an entire sect, but I would have thought that we could still cause some reaction. Amy muttered as she stared past the invisible barrier at the ritual altar, which was still dripping with fresh blood, despite there being no bodies present. We're missing something. Some detail that would make this all make sense. Dominic sighed. You've got that right. But until we can at least find a clue what that is, I don't see how we can change anything about this situation. All we can do is leave someone to watch it and update us if anything changes.